Hey, James Himm Mitchell here, and in this video I'm continuing my series on Cathy's Grand Tableau, this time picking things up right where we left off with the last video. And if you remember, in that last video we did a portrait spread using a topic card. Well, in this video we're going to be doing what's called counting round, and counting round from that portrait spread. So stay tuned. And here we are with the cards in the table, and if you recall, this is the portrait spread that we were using in the last video, and instead of a significator card we were using a topic card, and in this particular case we were using the ring, and we were using that as representative of the topic of marriage because that was one of Cathy's questions. She was asking about the state of her marriage. And so these were the nine cards total, but the 8 cards surrounding the ring. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to be counting round, and we're going to be extracting 5 cards from this portrait spread to use for a line of 5 reading that we will be following up with. So if you remember from the last time I did the counting round when we were using the lady card, which was Cathy's significator card, we're going to be doing it the same way. So we start with the center card as the first card, so we're going to extract the ring, so that's the first card, and then we're going to count 2 from this point until we get 5 cards for the reading. So going over 1, 2, crossroads becomes the next card, 1, 2, letter becomes the next card, 1, 2, clouds becomes the 4th card, and then rounding out the reading we'll have 1, 2, and the last card will be the gentleman. And so now what we'll do is I'll take a moment to remove the 4 remaining cards and to create the line, and we will kick the reading off with that. And so now, having removed the 4 cards that are not going to be making up the line of 5 and rearranging the line, we have, in the order of the cards that were pulled from the counting round sequence, we have the ring becomes the first card, followed by crossroads being the second card. Then in the middle we have a new focus card, which is going to be the letter, followed by the clouds, and then rounding out the line we have the gentleman. So if you've been following the series all along, you know that the gentleman is representative of Dave, who is Cathy's husband, and the first thing that jumps out at me, of course, is that the man is at the end of the line. So that, for me, says a couple of things. Number one is like the end of the line for the man, you know, play on the phrase end of the line. So the man has reached the end of the line. So there's that. And then it shows the distance between him, being the last card, and the ring, which is the first card. So now we have seen, like, all of these other things are maybe factors that are influencing or playing a part into the aspect of the marriage that we've been looking at, especially since this is still a part of the portrait spread. So there's that. And then the other thing that strikes me about this is that, going with the direction of the man is looking to the right, and there's no card here. So the first thing that strikes me is the man is looking at or is facing an uncertain future only because we don't have a card there. And interestingly enough, then, that puts all the other cards behind him, and so now this becomes his past. So we have the ring here at the very first card, but it's in his past, and not only is it just in the past, but it's in the distant past. If you read the line, it's like this being the most recent past, the clouds, and then each one comes one step further removed. But again, it just puts his marriage in the past and him moving forward, but he's moving forward to an uncertain future because there's no card there in the future. And interestingly enough, the next thing is, of course, the card you never want to see touching anywhere near you is the clouds. And so the clouds is the card that's right next to the man. So while we have an uncertain future here, just because we don't have a card here, we also have something in the recent past still with a sense of uncertainty, because the clouds is right next to the man. So there's that aspect, just looking at the line generally speaking. So now, with the letter being the new focus, letter for me represents news and messages, but in this particular case I'm looking at it as written forms of communication because the letter is all about written correspondence. So going with that, I'm looking at the letter as possibly some paperwork or some documentation something of that nature that is still in play, whether Dave is a part of the marriage or not. So there's something about that for me about, I'm looking at it as written correspondence, written paperwork, written documentation. And it could be keeping with the idea of what do we need to know about the state of the marriage, which was the ring as the focus card in the portrait spread. This could actually be the marriage license. So especially with ring being in the line, if we pair ring and letter, it could be what do we need to know about the marriage, but also too, like, how's that going to affect any documentation or paperwork connected to the marriage. So I'm seeing that as a possibility about the new focus with the letter card. So then what I do is I take a look at the cards that are immediately flanking the center card. So we have here crossroads on the left and clouds on the right. So as a pair, I'm reading that as, you know, direction with the crossroads, direction, choice, alternatives, options. This could be about, you know, approach. This could also be about departure. So I'm seeing that as keywords, possibilities for the crossroads. And then over here, clouds typically represents, you know, uncertainty, confusion, being unsure about something, having doubt about something. So I'm seeing that as possible keyword choices for that. And if we pair the two, we could have, you know, uncertain direction. We could have that choices are unclear, or that a departure is uncertain, because the man has made the departure because it's in his past, but we still have a sense of uncertainty about that because clouds is being a card that's closest touching to him. So even though he's made the choice to leave, there's still some uncertainty, you know, in terms of maybe some things that need to be still handled, still taken care of, that kind of thing. So I'm seeing that with crossroads and clouds. And now we can go to the pair of cards on either end. So we have the ring on the one side here, and the ring, of course, represents the marriage itself, but it can also represent contracts, commitments, agreements, promises made. So it could be saying too, like, even though they may be uncertain about the state of the marriage, there may have been some previous commitments, because this card over here on this side would represent the past. There may be some previous or promises or commitments made that still need to be handled or taken care of, or they're now becoming prominent in terms of like needing to be looked at, you know, and some of those could even be recurring, because I tend to read ring as something that is recurring or something that is cyclical. So I'm seeing that as possibilities. And then of course the man just represents the man. So usually we look at surrounding cards around the man to describe either who the man is or what the man is doing. So here we have ring and man as a pair, and so it could just be committed man, describing the man, and committed man in the past, because now he has left the marriage. So that's one form of commitment that he's left, but still being committed to maybe some other things. So of course the obvious one here is married man. He was married man. And then we have the man puts the marriage behind him because the ring is behind him. So, and he has now facing the other way. So those are some of the possibilities I'm getting with the ring and the man as a pairing. The next thing we can do is we can look at the pair of ring and crossroads. And so I'm reading this as possibility of, you know, marriage going with the ring, options, alternatives, you know, so marital options, alternatives are being approached, because the crossroads can be an approach. So either they're being approached or they're being decided upon. So I'm seeing that as, and of course, what I love about this is, again, it's just another way of restating some of the things that have already been shown in the cards. But I love looking for repetition. So the more you see the same message, it kind of reinforces that, or kind of validates that, or confirms that. So again, we're just stating the obvious here. So, you know, marital choices are being looked at, so a decision can be made. So again, but that's kind of like what has been the motivation for Kathy having the reading done. One was like she wanted to know the direction of the marriage, like, you know, where is it going, but also too, like, if the marriage is now a thing in the past. Where does she go from here? So it's just, again, of reinforcing that. And to go with that even further, we have the Queen of Diamonds here. So that could be a woman. So again, it could just be, and she's facing the ring. So that would be another way of kind of just saying a woman has to make some decisions about the marriage one way or the other. One way or the other. So that's playing on the directionality of crossroads. So there's that. And then on this side of the letter, in the future, we have clouds and man. So again, that would just be a way of, again, describing Dave. So one of the ways we could say this is like confused man, an uncertain man, but it was also about, in terms of Kathy, since she's the one who's having the reading done because she's the one asking the question, it would say like she would still be, at this point, still be unsure, going with the clouds, about the man. So I'm seeing that as possibilities with that. And then the next thing we can do is we could take a look at the cards touching the center card. So first we have crossroads and letter as a pair. And so that could just be options in writing, because I'm sticking with what I'm thinking about the letter is something being written. So it could just be options that are going to be put into writing. And then on the other side we have letter and clouds. And so it could be a document becomes uncertain. So I'm going with the marriage license, keeping with the idea here that we're asking about the state of the marriage. So that could be a document becomes uncertain, or that a document is confusing. So if for some reason there is some sort of written document between Kathy and Dave, and very interesting, if you notice the playing cards, we have the Queen of Diamonds, which is a woman on one side. We have the King of Clubs, which is a man on the other side. And in between them is this document. So there could be some document between the two that is going to be confusing or is confusing. So I'm seeing that as a possibility. And so now the last thing we can do is we can read the line from left to right in forward narration as a way to kind of sum up what the cards are trying to tell us about the question. So one possibility, and if you see something different in the line, go with what you see. I'm a big believer in that. Even though I'm presenting these videos, I'm finding that the people who normally watch these videos are also people who read the cards. So if you see something different, go with what you see. I'm only going to see one thing or a couple of things, but I'm not going to see every possibility. And that's what I love about presenting these videos to my viewers, is because they are very vocal in terms of what they see, and they love sharing that with me, and I love seeing what it is that they see, because I'm thinking like, wow, that's pretty good, or that's really cool, or I hadn't even considered that. So if you see something different, go with that. But this is what I'm seeing as a possibility to reading the line from left to right. So I'm seeing the possibility of multiple agreements, going with ring and crossroads as a pair, because crossroads represents something in multitudes or multiples, and so I'm reading that as the descriptor of the ring, which is agreement. So I'm seeing multiple agreements are documented, going with the letter, in writing, keeping with the letter, being written correspondence, due to the uncertainty, that's the clouds, of the man, and that's gentleman at the end of the line. So again, the way I'm seeing it is multiple agreements are documented in writing due to the uncertainty of the man. And so that's how I would read the line. So that would be what I would tell Kathy if we were looking at the topic card in the portrait spread, and then this would be the line of 5 as the essence of what that topic portrait spread is all about. So now we're going to move to looking at the playing cards, because everybody knows, or at least people who have been watching these videos of mine for a while, when I do a line of 5, I start with looking at the keywords associated with the cards, then I take a look to see what the dynamics are, and I get that from the playing card aspects. And so we will get to that now to see what the playing cards are offering us additionally in terms of information or guidance. And now taking a look at the playing cards, what we have going from left to right. On the ring we have the Ace of Clubs. On crossroads we have the Queen of Diamonds. For the letter we have the 7 of Spades. For the clouds we have the King of Clubs. And rounding out the line on the gentleman we have the Ace of Hearts. So these are the cards we're going to be looking at for the hidden dynamics. And the way I do the dynamics is I still keep the intention and the focus on the center card being the letter. But what we do is we look at the dynamics on one side of the issue, which would be the first two cards, and then we take a look at the cards that are on the other side of the issue, and that would be the remaining two cards. So the first two cards we have the Ace of Clubs and the Queen of Diamonds. So for me, I look at the numerical value of those, and so we have a 1 for the ace, and queens in cartomancy for me are valued at 12. So 1 and 12 is 13, and then I look for the corresponding card that matches that number in the deck. So the 13th card in the Lenormand is the child card. So I'll put the child card right here. So on one side, if we're keeping with the idea here that the letter is about potential paperwork or documentation, something being in written form, then the child would represent it's something new, because the child card can represent something new, something beginning, you know, starting out with something. So I'm seeing that it could also be something small. So, but I'm going to go, keeping with the idea that letter is paperwork or documentation, I'm going to say that it is something that could be potentially new. Now, the other thing about the child card, it could represent an actual child, given the fact that Lenormand is something very literal, excuse me. So it can actually be something having to do with a child, and that would make sense because Kathy and Dave do have one child. Child is a teenager, so it may be something having to do with the child in terms of maybe, and on this side, it could be choices or decisions, you know, that need to be agreed upon, but they're surrounding a child, and in order to make sure that that is amicable and that each person honors his or her word pertaining to that, then they get it in writing. So I'm seeing that. So it can either be something new or something pertaining actually to a child. So that's on the one side. And then here on the other side, we have clouds, which has a King of Clubs, so that's 13. Because kings for me are valued at 13, and then we have the Ace of Hearts, which, so that's 1. So 13 and 1 is 14. So the 14th card in the deck is the Fox card. So I'm seeing that as a possibility right here. So on this side, you know, if the letter represents documentation or paperwork of some kind, we've already touched on the fact that Dave, in the last video, Dave is self-employed, and so now we have Fox on this side with the man card, and also too with the inset, the King of Clubs. The King of Clubs can represent somebody who is a business leader or somebody who is a CEO, or at least for me, that's the case. So it's a nice reinforcement of like this paperwork or this documentation could be tied to Dave's self-employment. Now the other thing here, if the whole idea here that the paperwork is going to be new, then Fox could be something that represents a state of independence. So it could be, you know, going with that, if a person is married and there's documentation proving that or stating that, and now the person wants their independence, well, this could be like, you know, getting separation papers, you know, that would be the next step in the legal process. So it could be, you know, papers, and that would be a new thing. So, you know, somebody getting a new sense of independence, then that would be something that becomes documented, because you'd have to have at least separation papers, at least to get that ball going. So there's that. Now the other thing here, if we are keeping with the idea here that the possibility of the documentation is that, so a commitment going with the ring or a promise or a vow or a pledge of some kind is kept and honored, then Fox could warn of the possibility of the reasoning for that is, you know, just to make sure somebody's not lying, somebody's not trying to cheat someone, somebody's not trying to be conned or scammed, because now these are the more challenging or negative aspects of the Fox, you know, going with that. So making sure that they're not being taken advantage of. And so the best way to make sure that that doesn't happen is maybe to get that documentation in writing, especially if there's the emotional undercurrent of the possibility of, you know, broken trust, you know, having suspicions, you know, as a result of Dave leaving Kathy, you know, if Kathy's feeling this sense of like she can't trust Dave, then she might want to, from this point forward, make sure that she gets things in writing, especially if that's the way she can make sure that Dave will keep his word. And remember, now we have ring and gentleman as a pair here on the outskirts or on each side of the line, which suggests that there may be a possibility that, you know, she may look at like, well, he didn't keep his vows in terms of his marriage because he's leaving her, so what else can she expect him to kind of renege on? So I'm seeing that as a possibility. So again, it could be like something having to do with his business. It could also be making sure that the needs of the child are taken care of, because the fox in that case can be about survival, you know, one, survival. So making sure that even after he's gone, that his child is still being taken care of, that kind of thing. So self-employment, the child, and just to make sure, you know, Kathy's taking care of herself, that she's being covered. So Dave doesn't maybe fall into maybe a habit of, you know, falling back on his promises. So those are what I'm seeing with these cards. And so now what we can do is we can take the line and add them all across. So if you go with the idea that we have 13 on this side and 14 on this side, that is a total of 27. And then for the center card, we have the 7 of spades. So 27 and 7 gives us 34, and the 34th card in the deck is the fish. So now here we go. This maybe gives us more to go on, because the fish, for me anyway, is a card that talks about finances. It's a money card. So it could be, with the letter, it could be a financial agreement, a financial statement, you know, getting something having to concern finances in writing. So that just adds more light to what the nature of the paperwork or the documentation is. So I'm going to go with fish, saying like this could just be about money and just making sure that, you know, finances are being honored and the financial commitments are being honored, especially if they concern a child, because that would be things like child support, things of that nature. It could also be if they move forward and they create a sense of separation and divorce, then this could be, you know, alimony, whatever. If they have the business kind of a joint thing, if the business is like a family operation, that kind of energy, then even though their marital status may change, are they still going to be business partners? How's that going to work? And so looking at it from all possible ways. But at the center of it, it could just be financial statements, financial documentation, financial paperwork. So I'm seeing that as the emphasis of the letter through the playing cards, looking at it from the place of the dynamics. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to round things out, and we're going to be looking at the numerical values of the cards, because I look, when I work with Lenormand, I look at 3 aspects of it. So in the first segment, we looked at the image and the associations with the image. Then we looked at the playing cards, and now we're going to be looking at the numerical values, adding them all up and drilling them down for what I call the essence line, or the essence card. And now, turning my attention to the numbers on the cards, I'm going to add them all the way across to see what the essence card is going to be for this line of 5. And so starting from left to right, we have 25 with the ring, 22 with crossroads, the letters 27, clouds is 6, and the gentleman is 28. That gives us a total of 108. And since it's over 36, I'm going to take the digits, add them together. So 1 plus 0 is 1, and then plus 8 is 9. And the 9th card in the deck is the bouquet. And here's the card. I'm going to put it right here in the middle. And so for me, bouquet, a couple of associations that I have for bouquet. The bouquet can represent a surprise. It can represent a gift. It can represent an invitation. For me, it can also be about talent and appreciation. Now, out of all of those, and keeping in context with the question and the discussion of the situation up to this point, out of all of those, I would choose a surprise. So it could be whatever this documentation is, whatever this paperwork is. Yes, we know it's of a financial nature, but it could be something that is surprising. So I'm going to say that too. So whoever whether it's Kathy introduces this to Dave, Dave introduces this to Kathy, who is ever on the receiving end, because flowers are usually something that's given from one person to another. So somebody has to give it and then somebody has to receive it. So whoever's on the receiving end, this may come off as a surprise. So I'm seeing that. The idea here of the agreement, though, in nature, it's designed to be something that's going to be pleasant for everyone involved, because the flowers or the bouquet can represent something wonderful, something pleasant, something beautiful. And out of those descriptors, I would choose the word pleasant. So the idea here is about, making sure that everyone is appreciated, going with the appreciation aspect of it, is appreciated in this agreement, going with the ring and the letter, this agreement, whatever it is, making sure that everyone is served by the mutuality, for lack of a better way of saying it, of the agreement. So I'm seeing it's something that's going to work in the best interest of everyone involved. And so the other thing about the flowers or the bouquet that I want to say is, and this may not necessarily be a totally Lenormand technique, but I'm looking at the picture and I'm considering flowers are something that's arranged. So it could be, again, like this is about making sure certain arrangements or certain provisions are being made with this agreement, and that's the only way to make sure that, again, those commitments, those agreements are being honored, is by drafting up or arranging or preparing a document or a contract in writing. So that will be how I will end this. So we will end this here. So this has been looking at a topic card through first a portrait and then counting around with the line of 5. And so now in our next video, we're going to be looking at the cards around the significator, cards from the past, the present, and the future. So I am James Himm Mitchell, and as I sign off, I want to thank you for joining me in this space, and I look forward to sharing the same space in our next video together. So until then, I'm hoping that you have a wonderful day, and until we talk again, take care.